Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Today? And we were just talking about Josh and Emily. We've talked about, supernatural. They're getting ready to experience lots of supernatural stuff with coming up with a new house, and it's going to be fun to have them back on and have them share their story, updated story. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I tell you, Rich and I talk about this all the time, but there's no greater delight than watching people, experiencing probably experiencing ourselves may be the only greater delight than watching others we know and love walk and live in this beautiful abiding relationship with God, where living in the supernatural just becomes so normal.
Yep. Yep.
And it's amazing. For me, I stand in awe all the time of just getting to watch my kids live out this life and how they get to seek him and just watch him move on their behalf and the way they love him. And, I feel like any given day, I could literally pick up the phone and just call one of my kids. If I'm feeling my faith faltering for whatever reason, just call them and ask what God's doing in theirs that day.
Right.
And it reminds me of how incredibly faithful he is.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We've talked about our kids, particularly in college, and Joshua, grandson, is at Baylor, enjoying
Wrapping up his first year.
Yeah,
there,
he's
right?
just a couple of weeks away from his finals of his second semester, and he'll be heading off. But he started in engineering, which is what he thought he would like, and as he's experienced it, one of the things that we teach and we ask is, are you enjoying it?
Right.
And his answer was, after the first semester into the second one, was, not really. And it was at that moment. See, it's not a matter of, well, therefore. It's okay. Take that, go spend some time with God, and try to unpack, what's going on. Maybe you just got to get through, this beginning course stuff, and you're going to go from struggle to actually enjoy it. And this is just normal or typical, and so that's it. Or maybe you're doing too much. By the way, he was in ROTC and in Christian ministry there and taking a pretty heavy load. That was part of it, by the way.
That's a heavy load, yeah.
That he was overwhelmed by it all. So it was like, well, maybe I should change part of that, which he did. And but I just said, well, why don't you go and talk to the Lord and process, what's going on? What is he saying? Process the truth and let the truth come to you, and you'll know, what to do. So, to his credit, and he's learned this before, he did. And he processed it through, and it was like, actually, I'm not sure that, as I think of it, and what I try to do is said, move away from thinking about courses, think about career.
Yes.
Because that's really where God's heading you, is what are you going to enjoy that's in sync with who you are. And he wants to give you the desires of your heart. And the desires of your heart at that level, particularly when it comes to work, is who I've been built to be by God. And he wants to sync up work with who I am so that I enjoy it. And every day I go to work, I'm going to look forward to it. Now, again, remember, it's not pie in the sky, and there's going to be, particularly when you're starting out. I can remember when I started out, I wanted to be the president of the company. They're like, yeah, well, hey, son, why don't you just learn this stuff first?
Got a few things to learn first.
And because of my nature, I'm not super focused on it. I can pay attention to detail, but that's not my bent. It's more conceptual and strategic and big thinking, and but I had to learn detail. And one of the things I had to learn when I first started was accounting, and I had taken accounting courses, and they said, well, in order for you to get into this business, roles, you have to know accounting, and it's very, very detailed, but you're going to have to do it. Okay, and at that time, and this, this kind of dates me, but there wasn't these calculators. It was pretty manual, and everything was done, which, by the way, the keyboard in your computer is organized this way, but it's called a 10 key. I don't know if you remember, there were these machines called 10 keys, and it was just the same way, but you'd have to punch the numbers to be able to put it onto something or type it out.
Right.
A 10 key. And so I can remember one activity, they said, well, you got to learn how to use this 10 key really, really well. If you're going to do accounting, you got to do it quick, and you got to type these numbers out, fast. Okay, so I can remember they gave me a phone book and said, I want you to type in every phone number on that list. Just pick a page, and I want you to be able to do it without looking.
By the way, you just dated yourself again when you said phone book.
Yeah, phone book. Like, what, huh? What's a phone book?
For younger listeners, that's this paper thing that used to come out every year that had everybody's phone numbers.
They deliver it with a name and the number in a piece of paper in a book. And so I had to learn. I said, you got to learn this without looking, and practice, and this, I literally hated it. Because I don't like spending that much energy on it. It's something that, but I had to do it, to learn something. So it wasn't that you don't, particularly when you're moving into new positions or beginning positions. Yeah, there's things you're not going to like, but fundamentally, are you in the right spot that syncs up? So that's what I asked Joshua to pay attention to, was think about, and we talked about it, and I said, so the best way to do that would be go talk to people in different careers, particularly out of engineering. Well, what careers are you in? What's it like? What does that involve? And he did, and the more he did, the less he liked it. You know what? I don't think that is me. Well, I said, what do you like? I don't know. Okay. Well, why don't you go and talk to people about business and. One thing he did like, because he liked the ROTC, and he was always good at problem solving, is I kind of like, I do like, law enforcement. I do like investigation. I do like solving, riddles.
Right.
Well, I said, well, that sounds to me like detective work or FBI stuff, and, go talk to them. And he did, and go talk to business, and he did. And as he's talking, well, I think it's this way and that way, and we're just praying, God, show him what you want to show him, and he's thinking political science and probably, get ready to do, something in criminology, which he liked. And then he was just talking to somebody, and they said, based on who I think you are, I think you're going to like this thing called supply chain.
Big demand for that right now.
So he calls me up and he says, what's supply chain? What is that all about? And I went through it all and talked to him. I said, it's this and this and this. And, why don't you go investigate that? I said, I could see you doing really well. And by the way, it's a gigantic issue today, and going to get even more so. And computers and all this stuff, and you'll actually use some of the math that you have, and different than engineering, but you'll like it. And so he investigated that and started talking to people about it. And because God had just intersected, hey, by the way, think about this.
Right.
He started to think about it, process it, pursue it, and God kept reinforcing it. And he's changing his major to business with a concentration in supply chain.
Excellent.
And by the way, I said, does that still leave you the opportunity to go into criminology? He said, yeah, I'm going to minor in criminology. So he said lots and lots of options. He said, I'm really excited.
And Baylor's Business School is one of the best.
It's one of the best, and he's already. He said, I've already got my next 10 classes ready to go for next year, 2 semesters. He said, I'm really excited, and I just am praising God that He led me to what He has for me. I didn't have to worry about it. I just had to receive it. And he even talked about, how cool is this that God can do things supernaturally, and
Awesome.
It was like, wow, how cool is that? So as we're trying to help you understand it, it's just a beautiful work of God that's not natural. It's not getting better at naturally doing things. It's rather Him at work, and we get to be the recipients of that.
Right.
And it's known by us because we see it, and not only do we see it, but he adds to it. Hey, did you see that was me? Yes. Let me show you more. Hey, that's me. Hey, that's me. And it's really cool. Is that when these wonderful things happen, and He says that, hey, this is me. It just throws your heart, because you realize God cares about you that level, to be able to do something that's really personal. And I think I shared this before, but I was teaching a group, about 100 people, in the Bible, abiding. And I made this joke about Linda that was funny, kind of, put her a little bit in a poor, I would say a poor light per se, because it was, and with, I'm married to Lucy Ricardo, so I got all kinds of great stories. So, and they laughed, and then this guy at the back stood up and said, "Hey, Rich, we've heard that before," and everybody laughed. And when he said that, see, I heard the Holy Spirit said, "That's me. That is me. I'm saying this to you, and hey, I need you to pay attention to this. You think it's funny. It's not funny." And you haven't really processed this because you're dishonoring your wife. And it's not that you're openly doing that. It's that you are doing it. And we know more about this than they do. And I'd like you to deal with this. And see, when that happens, it wasn't like, well, I better shape up. It's like, this is me. I want to gather your attention. Now, would you walk with me? And I'm going to have you process this, which will include understanding it, how to talk to Linda about this, how to confess this, how to then. I don't want you just to take care of this little issue. I'm taking care of something bigger than that. That's a heart issue, and I need to show you something. And so, because of it, when he says, "Hey, that's me. Come and walk with me," and I already had learned by that time, when that happens, it's like, hallelujah, sure, because it's not condemnation.
Right.
It's I want to heal you. I want to refine you. I want to transform you.
That is something so much more exceptional too.
Yeah, and I want to give you freedom, and you weren't aware of it, but now I'm making you aware of it. Okay, and see that whole thing, that guy standing up, that was supernatural. Everybody else had no clue about it, by the way.
Right.
But I did. Why? Because he said so. Yeah. See, that's how it works. So it's really beautiful. So let's continue as we looked at it. What is really? We talked last time in Matthew 8. Authority comes from him speaking, because his speaking is superior to the material. Okay, let's go to Matthew 12 and read verses 9 to 14. Matthew 12, 9 to 14.
Now, when he had departed from there, he went into their synagogue, and behold, there was a man who had a withered hand. And they asked him, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? That they might accuse him. Then he said to them, What man is there among you who has one sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not lay hold of it and lift it out? Of how much more value then is a man than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Then he said to them,
Go ahead. No, yeah, keep going. 14 through 14.
Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and it was restored as whole as the other. Then the Pharisees went out and plotted against him how they might destroy him.
Yeah. Those are, again, to me, when you kind of look at stuff, just kind of simple and fresh, it's like, so he just healed this guy. Mm-hmm. And that offends you?
Right. And
you're going to go try to do something about it and get him out of the way when this guy just had this fantastic thing. What? To me, it's always funny, like, what are you thinking? How could you think that way? Which, by the way, is law, is it ain't following my system. And if it's not following my system, I can't have you participate because it's not my system, and that's why supernaturally, by the way, God says, let me show you, don't get boxed in here. Right. Of anything even you've thought before is, be open, to what I have to do. So, hey, is it lawful to do this on the Sabbath? Because our law says no.
Right.
And Jesus' response is really cool. He says, okay, let me ask you a question. You got a sheep that falls into a hole. What are you going to go do?
You're going to get him out,
Well,
right?
go get him out. What happens if it happens on Sunday or Sabbath, which would be Saturday for them? You go get him out.
You're still going to go get him out.
Get him out. Okay, so he says, you got a problem, and your natural thought is, I gotta solve. I can, and I'm going to try to solve this problem. Mm-hmm. He said that's your first reaction. He said, now think about how much more valuable is a person who's got a problem. Wouldn't you think that your first reaction would be, how can I assist this person?
Right.
Because you see they got a problem. Just like you would do for the sheep, you don't even think about it. You don't even wonder about it. Like, too bad. I guess they're just going to pass away. And no, you're going to go take care of it because it's a natural response.
Right.
So he says the supernatural is to become the normal. Mm-hmm. He says when somebody's got a problem, and by the way, the problems which we're going to talk deeper about are everywhere and all the time about everything.
Right.
So
and when one arises.
Yeah. So he's not talking about just somebody is sick or somebody physically is an impairment. He says no, everything you got going. You're going to come across problems. We talked, I think on our End Times Friday, we talked about the banks through called Silicon Valley Bank, and this is now probably a month or so, that failed. And it was billions and billions of dollars that was involved. And people that had money in the bank had a problem. And that was that my bank account is only insured up to $250,000. What happens if I got millions in there? Theoretically, you could lose it.
Right.
By law. We only insure that. That's tough, And so, interesting enough, Dan, who's your husband's company, had money in that bank.
Right.
Because it was through investors. That was one of the banks that was very aggressive, positive, and helpful to banks that are growing like Dan's. So, and what would we know? It sounds good to us, and we didn't know there's any trouble. Well, he's got a problem. When he found out, Dan said, uh-oh, we got a lot of money in this bank. This could be a problem for us, And so, God, what do you have to say about that? Because this natural thought is, hey, I got how is this going to get resolved? Without I got to. Your first thought is, okay, what could possibly be a resolution about this? Mm-hmm. And of course, Dan goes to God and says, I know something is that I want it, just like you're teaching in the story, God says, I want your first thought, not your last thought, but your first thought to come to me.
Of what do you have to say?
Seek me, because I can solve things that nobody else can solve. And in the same way that you would go take care of a sheep, I want to take care of you. Why? Because I can. So I want that to be your first thought, is come and seek me. And what do I have to say about this problem? And let that become a way of living. Why? Well, because I can supernaturally do things that nobody else can. And by the way, it doesn't diminish that things can be done, naturally. Naturally meaning in the physical, so that, God says, hey, I got a problem. I'm sick. Well, go to the doctor and he'll tell you what to do. Right. That can be okay. So it's not to ignore and say it never happens, but the first thought is, the answer, guide me into that answer, and I'm going to normally go to you about the supernatural, as opposed to never going to you.
Right.
Or it's a last resort, is I tried, I couldn't get there. Is there anything possible you might do? God, would you? By the way, we usually tell God what to do at that point.
Yeah, I think what you're describing right there, I hear a lot of people, one of those things, one of my pet peeves, is always things that are tweetable, or, just you can get across in just a little bit of a few words, and they're never quite complete. But that idea, you hear people say all the time, I'm going to do my best and let God do the rest.
Right.
So, and it's just this, and it sounds like, oh, we're trusting him. But the reality is they're going to do everything what they're saying is, I'm going to do everything in my power. And then when I can't do anything else, then I'm going to see what God has to do.
Right.
And that's not how what you're describing here is, our first is to go to him. And then oftentimes he will give us steps that are things that we can do in the natural that also go along with what he's going to do in the supernatural.
Right.
Our first thing is to go to him of what he has to say. It's not do everything, use out every resource we know, and then bother to go check in with him.
Right. That's right. And and out of the thought of probably isn't going to happen anyway, I guess I'm stuck with this. I tried, and I couldn't get there. And we don't even consider that, okay, I got this issue.
Right.
You say, God, you have the power to resolve this issue. And I say that word purposely because, and I actually had to, somebody had to help me on this. What sometimes I say that, because he said the way that you say it, we know it's true, but the way you say it tends to imply something that isn't maybe true. And it would be this: you got a problem, you got an adversity. God, I guarantee you, God will overcome it. Well, he said the way people interpret that is the problem itself is going to get taken care of, and you don't have to worry about it. He said, no, that's not really true. I'll bring resolution to it.
Right.
And that little adversity actually may cause you to have trouble, or your business, maybe you're going to have a failure here, and that itself isn't going to be overcome, but I'm going to overcome it by resolving it. And I'll get you to the place where you understand it, it's done, completed, and you're behind it into the covenant life that I'm going to give you. And so we would say, well, God, I got a problem. Take care of it, meaning take care of it the way I want you to take care of it. Right. And God says, no, I want you naturally and normally to just come to me and say, I got a problem. I know that you're able and capable and willing and will resolve it. Walk me into that, which is going to include supernatural things, including just moving me to a different spot. Right. That maybe is the answer, and that's okay. And so God says, if you got a problem, you would normally go after it. I want you to think of the supernatural in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Come and seek me. Come and seek me at first. Make that your first process, not your never process or your last process. So remember, he said, it's me, and it's my heart to do it. And so we'll learn more about that next time, and we'll pick it up.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing. Thank you for joining us, everyone. As always, if you have questions, send them in at questions@afjministry.com. And we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
See you then.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.